One, we're here.
All right, welcome to the Good Life, everybody. So I'm here to talk about shame and people pleasing tonight with the dancing duo Chris and
Hey,
Kabi. Let's see. I feel like I have a bit of an echo. Does anybody else hearing that?
no, it's just you, brother. But
Perfect,
you can
perfect,
figure
cool.
that
Well, I
out.
get to hear myself. It's beautiful. Um, so yeah, long story short, here's how I want to break down tonight. So for those that are curious, what we're going to do is we're going to start with people pleasing. We're going to go to shame after that. And it's going to be kind of like a lightning round type thing. The reason I'm talking about both of these topics at the same time while ignoring this echo is they have a common theme of a lack of self worth. And they manipulate you in different ways because of that lack of self worth, your internal dialogue, etc. These two things show up in your life in very powerful ways. So first, I want to start with people pleasing. But before I even do that, fellas, how are you? What's going on in your worlds?
Life is good, man. Life is good. Uh, yeah. So I think you guys are picking up a little bit of echo on that side. I'm not sure. I don't really hear it, but either way, uh,
Maybe it's headphones.
maybe.
Somebody need headphones. Could be.
Might be. Let me try it out.
Yeah, it could be is messing the whole deal up. But while we take that break and get could be up and running, hey, we do want you to know we got some good stuff coming up at the beginning of the year. Yeah, that's definitely could be. It's definitely could be. But
I'm
yeah,
tempted to start over. By the way.
not at all. We're live. This is what live is about. Live is
All right.
about making sure that we're doing things and getting things rolling, regardless of the circumstances. It's gonna make it happen. But anyway, those
Perfect.
of you that are watching on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, you see it scrolling on the bottom of your screen. bit.ly/email TGL. If you're on Instagram, right, maybe we link it up in there. bit.ly/email TGL. Listen, your boys are putting some stuff together for you guys. We're putting some real good stuff together. And it's not just Khabib dancing. It's more than that.
I think he's stirring the pot. Is that what you're doing?
He's cooking. He's whipping it
Cooking,
up. He's
Cooking up
cooking.
something good.
cooking,
That's right.
cooking,
But we
cooking.
we are definitely cooking up some stuff for you. So jump on that link because what jump on that link because we want you to sign up for our email list. You're going to start getting an email about what we're throwing come 2022. It's almost a new year. And man, we know we've been giving you guys a ton of value, a ton of knowledge, a ton of information, but we want you guys to jump in with us when we host this event because it's going to be a big one where we can get you right for the beginning of 2022. We're going to be talking health, wealth, love, happiness, but in a private, intimate setting so that you can really get to that good life moving forward. So again, bit.ly/email TGL, the good life. Jump on our email list, guys, and look out for some good stuff coming up towards the end of the year into 2022. But that's how I'm doing. How are y'all doing?
What about you, Kabi?
Good, good, doing good,
Good.
That's good to hear.
good, good,
Perfect.
great.
Let's talk
Well,
people. Let's talk people pleasing, man.
let's dive right in. All right, so people pleasing, what is it? So the way I described this on the pregame show for those that tuned in is it is basically when you are putting yourself out there and you are prioritizing other people's wants and desires, needs, etc. So much so that it's actually self-sabotaging what you have going on. You're putting out so much energy, you're not getting much back, you're draining yourself, you're putting yourself in vulnerable situations that you are really you're just messing up your life in some small and some big ways. So when it comes to this topic, I'm not saying don't go out there and do good for other people. I'm saying just make sure you're taking care of yourself first because you cannot pour water into somebody else's cup until you fill up your own. So please, that's why this topic is so powerful. Fellas, thoughts on people pleasing before we dive into some of the details.
Yeah, for me, I mean, it's another form of disharmony, or dis-ease, and it comes from just being a little out of balance for a short period of time. and or for some people, chronically out of balance, right? Just like you can have low back issues, you know, you're chronically misaligned. So even though you get realigned over and over again, if you don't learn to kind of hold yourself in the right position, in the right posture, you're going to always have back issues. That's just kind of going to be what it is. So I kind of see this in for me, in my world, in that world, when I'm out of balance, right? When I'm looking for energy from other sources externally, in this particular case, people, right? When I'm looking for approval from people, that's what I think of when you say people pleasing, because I think we are all people pleasers to a certain extent because we like to be validated, we like to be congratulated, upheld. We're community, we're communal beings. So yeah, I think for me it's being lack of harmony in my life.
Yeah, that's huge. I think you said something that resonates with me. We talked about it a bit on the pregame, that like the term people pleaser or people pleasing has always confused me just a little bit, right? Like, again, I understand that, and again, it's a great uh, I guess way that you explained it, Stu. But when I really think about it, it's normally I would be like, well, I like people and I like pleasing people. So the two terms put together doesn't necessarily make me think that I'm doing something wrong or it's a bad thing. But when you say at the, at the expense of yourself or at the expense of, your true nature or your harmony or your ease, right, so to speak, if that's what then it makes sense. um, but yeah, I'm excited to dive into the topic only because I think more people, we need to talk about it more because it's an underlying thing that maybe people don't know that they're doing and where it comes from. I think if we dive into this topic and go really into like, where does it come from? Where do we get the people pleasing sense or kind of habit of doing it? But yeah, I'm excited to talk about it. I just have always thought like I like people, I like pleasing people, but when you put it at the expense, well, I don't like anything to come at the expense of my own personal happiness or peace or whatever the case is. So excited to talk about it.
Yeah, the expense piece is huge. You're muted on. Yeah.
On here real quick as we smoothly transition. Um, so the what I kind of look at it is like a coin, two sides of the same coin. So people pleasing being one side of it. I think I'm personally, my vocabulary, missing a term for what that whole coin is called. And I know one side of it is people pleasing. That's more of to the detriment of myself, or it has a negative connotation, or it's clearly not getting to me where I want to go, or it's getting me where I want to go, but I'm losing some sort of communal respect of some sorts, right? So I see it two sides of the same coin. I would be curious what you guys would replace. Like, what would you call that whole coin, right? And then what would you call the other side of that?
So I'm kind of drawing something up right now. Basically, what I would kind of call this, I don't know if we can see it because of light. I'll have to post this later. Basically, on one end of the spectrum, you've got somebody that is, I would actually refrain it to over people pleasing. Like, you are going over the top, like people over pleasing. Who knows? On the other side of that, it's you're doing all of this stuff to move your life forward to get what you want at the expense of other people, like almost on the narcissist category. So I think everyone has to be aware that this is a spectrum. This is not, I see the term narcissist thrown around so much on social media. Like and anytime a partner is deemed as slightly selfish, they must be a narcissist. Like, this is a balance. It's a spectrum. You could go anywhere from, we'll call it a 1 at people pleasing to a 10 at being a narcissist. And there's anything in between. It's all about finding balance. Now, some people are much more okay providing more energy out than taking in when it comes to other people. They perhaps get their energy through other ways: exercise, sunlight, food, whatever. Some people definitely take way too much from other people in order to propel themselves forward, and they just leave a wake of destruction in their past. So I would say overall, if I were to try and name this coin with those two different sides, it would probably be something along the lines of how you treat people. something like that. We'll brainstorm on that. I like this idea. We'll come up with a coin for this. That'll be a solid post. So here's what I want to dive into next. So what are the causes of this? Now, a lot of you folks, Capone, thanks for letting us know, brother. Thanks for chiming in.
Hey, shout out to Edmund. Shout out to Edmund right there. He popped in at some point. I see you, my guy. You know what I'm saying? Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
We love the engagement, y'all. Appreciate y'all hopping in and asking questions, etc. So where does this show up in life? I'm actually going to go there next. This shows up mostly what I'm going to identify is your relationships and your work. So we're talking platonic, romantic, and work relationships. That's where all of this shows up. So quick examples. When you're at work and you're trying to do absolutely everything to satisfy your boss, your coworkers, but you're draining yourself, you're not taking care of your own health, you're not spending time with your family, you're literally all in because you're just chasing whatever it may be at whatever expense. That is how that shows up in work. How do I know this? I used to do it. Construction management can really, really lead somebody down that path. There's nothing wrong with the industry in general, but in some of these companies where they push people to their brink, you will find yourself crushing it and just doing everything for work and your bosses at your own expense. Your life won't be moving forward. You won't be happy, but you'll have money. Is that what life's all about? I think no. The other areas, platonic relationship.
No.
Yeah. How much you trying to sell your soul for? It's a question.
$1 billion.
It's got to be $1 billion these days.
Yeah. Shout out inflation.
Amen. So on the platonic side, people pleasing with your friends can show up, and I would say family as well, can show up in you going over the top to put yourself out there to take care of somebody else. You're always following up with them. You're always doing things for them, but they're not appreciative. They're not doing something for you in return. They're not giving you some of that energy back. A lot of people overlook this in friendships. I have in my past. I'm constantly scanning who is contributing to me as I contribute to them, because that shows value, that shows mutual respect. So keep an eye out for things like that. And I would say the most important one of these is your romantic relationships. When you are doing so much for your partner and you are getting so little in return, this could show up in I don't know, dependency on someone, where you're just constantly doing everything you can to get their validation. I love that Khabib brought that word up. That's so key. So those are the 3 areas. Fellas, what's on your mind?
I mean, just from you initially kind of covering it that way, the first thing that kept coming to my mind is the word need. You need a platonic relationship. Like, you need your friend. You need them. Like, it's like it becomes like this need that you have for a person or people in order to get that thing that you want. And Tony Robbins had talked about like the 6 basic human needs. And I've talked about this before. And one of those basic human needs is love and connection, right? So it's significance, certainty, uncertainty, love and connection, growth and contribution. So as a human race, right, those are the 6 like things, basic human needs that we all need. And we go about experiencing and having experiences in our life that fill those needs, right? They fill those needs. How we choose to get them filled is up to us. It's up to our environment. It's up to the things that we expose ourselves to. But typically that's what we're after: significance, certainty, uncertainty, love and connection, growth and contribution. And that love and connection part with all of these, whether it be your friends, whether it be your spouse, or whatever the case is, there is a dependence, like a need for this love and connection. Like, I want your approval. I want this to work out regardless of what you're telling me on your side or why. It's like I'm getting this need met by going and doing that. And that's kind of like the first thing that had popped into my mind when you were explaining it a bit, Stu. And I think that's really like the basis of a lot of this stuff is like, why would you go out of your way, right? Out of your way to do any of these things? Because you're trying to fill a need. Like, you're trying to fill some void or something that's there, and you're trying to do it through people, right? So that's kind of where my brain just initially went.
That was beautifully put, man. Yeah, it really is. That love and connection, it is a desire and it's a need. So sometimes people go just too far to satisfy that need at their own expense.
Yeah. And would you say that it comes from a lack of that? Like, when we go back to like our parents and like the initial primary relationships that we have, if for some reason we feel like we didn't receive love in the right ways, or we didn't get to this place of connection or love from our parents or from friends, or then all of a sudden we develop this thing because we're constantly seeking it. You think that is that one of the like root causes of where it comes from?
Absolutely. And I'm actually about to dive into causes. You just hit one of the major ones on the head. Khabib, do you have anything before we move on?
You know, I want to hear the next thing before I chime in here a little bit. I got a little something cooking here. And
oh yeah,
because you guys are hitting on a lot of good points, and I want to take it and relate it back more directly to health and wellness, etc. But I think it would make a lot more sense if you make your next point.
Okay, beautiful. So first of all, with the causes for people pleasing, like I want to introduce everybody to the concept that there are an infinite number of combinations in your life that could happen to create a situation like this. One of the most powerful ones is childhood trauma and neglect. Now, childhood trauma could come in many different forms. It could be some kind of abuse, could be, sexual or emotional, or it could just be, you growing up in an environment where there's an awful lot of like arguing and energy and turmoil to the point where as a child you feel like you are in some type of verbal emotional war zone. These can develop this idea that your value or your survival is in danger. Like you don't feel safe in your own home. And when that begins to happen, you start thinking, I can't get kicked out. Like I can't be kicked out of my house at 3 months old like a celebrity just did. Like there's so much. Like yeah, I did it.
Way to go there on the pop culture on the
yeah, trying to tie it together.
There we go.
So if you as a child are so worried about your standing or you're potentially getting kicked out or abandoned or whatever, you're going to do everything you can to make your parents happy, to make the people who are in charge happy. You want to survive. Just like if you're at work, you want to survive. You don't want to get fired. You want to make sure they love you. You're going to put in all that energy. The question is, are you maintaining the boundaries that take care of yourself and self-respect? Now, as a child, you're not thinking like that yet. You're thinking about surviving. So you're absolutely right. One of these is childhood trauma and neglect. For anyone looking to learn more about that, I would recommend checking out the Holistic Psychologist on Instagram. So also ways that this can come up. You have extremely high expectations of yourself, your relationships, you're seeking validation from others, and you're doing all these different types of things to make everybody around you happy at your own expense. I could go into so much more on that. Love to hear what you guys have to say.
Yeah, let me chime in here. Because I relating back to the childhood piece of it. I think that's definitely one of them. Approval from parents, even from from young infancy, and this is always. First, I want to highlight the higher level picture that I'm kind of wanting to point out, and then we're gonna just like a couple of examples as you're discussing them, Stu. Higher level is just kind of like how we play this balance of like safe, unsafe, of like structure, unstructured, right? I think one of those is certainty, uncertainty, right? Is that there's a harmony, there's a place for both, right? So there's a place for us as a baby to make eye contact with our parent and receive some sort of facial clue that we are safe, or that everything is okay, or that whatever the situation may be, we need some information and we gather it that way. Now the sort of and it's funny we brought up Enneagram earlier, because an Enneagram, you could be a healthy 8 or a not so healthy 8 or a natural 8, right? Somewhere in the middle. And I think that's kind of what we're doing here, is like a not healthy, application of people pleasing, which is a 2, by the way. A 2 is a people pleaser, or the helper. We call it people pleasing, but they're the helper. They like to assist naturally. That's what they do. But an unhealthy two is someone who's clingy, who's looking for all from external, who's like not so secure in themselves, etc. Right? So, that's what I'm kind of thinking about in that high level of like playing that balance of safe, unsafe, of like plus, negative, of like playing that balance, and then the details, and that being one of them. Another one that I was thinking of earlier is this not but think about like in class, for example, as a young child, you raise your hand to answer a question, and you're so confident that the capital of Tennessee is Albuquerque, right? And then you get it all wrong, and you're all embarrassed, and you look around, and Shauna, the girl back there that she was kind of trying to talk to, is like, he's so dumb. This may or may not have happened.
I was about to say, bro. I was like, this sounds personal.
It's a lot of detail. Yeah,
we're getting personal here. We got to drop it.
Hey, listen.
Shauna, if you're listening,
he's not done. He's not done. Listen, he turned out to be a very good young man. Very bright.
Yes. And I know the capital of Tennessee. Stu, back to you, Stu. Take the
mic. Oh man. So yeah, I mean, you nailed it in a very different way, and that's the platonic pupil as a student. You're basically putting yourself out there, you're being vulnerable, and the reaction from those around you is so harsh that you withdraw. You pull in your shell. It's not about me and my personal power anymore. It's about making sure that this never happens again. How do I make all these people around me satisfied so I never feel this way? So absolutely. So from here, I'm going to go ahead and dive into some solutions. I've actually had a couple of sessions here recently about this, and it's actually very simple. When you think about it on the terms of a spectrum, how much, if you're at a 1 and you're totally doing everything for other people, which is basically impossible, you have to take care of yourself, else you're withering away. Or if you're at a 10 where you're totally only doing things for yourself, I want everybody to focus on how could I get somewhere around a 4 to a 6? How could I get about in the middle? How can I measure the amount of energy, whether it's money, time, attitude, attempts at communication and resolving a problem, all these different things. How can I try and quantify how much am I giving out versus how much am I getting back? Or if you don't want to think about it on the balance, on the harmony side, which I love that Kaveh always brings up is the harmony piece of this. How can you ensure that what you're giving out energy-wise, if it's positive, if you are in this state where you're trying to build people up and encourage them, what are you getting back? Is it negative? Because that is a very, very dangerous position to be in. I've been around friends that will put you in that situation. And because you are so determined to please the people around you and keep your friends and not be on your own, you may be lowering your standards of how people talk to you just to keep them around. So really the solution here is you have to measure your day-to-day actions. I would recommend for those that like to write and journal, go ahead and journal the things where you did something for other people. Ask yourself, was it a fair exchange? Is this person worthy of this because they also take care of me? Or is it something that was just benevolent that was not at much cost to you and it doesn't feel like it's dragging you down? You actually gained more energy from providing that service. So you just have to tap in and just pay attention. This is ownership. We talk about this all the time. If this is something you feel like you're putting out too much energy, take ownership, measure it, determine how you're doing, look at your specific habits, your patterns, and reflect on it.
Stu, I'm curious, man, how much do you think people are aware that they're people pleasing and where they fall in that spectrum? Do you think people actually see, they will pinpoint this as a problem, or how does it show up in someone's life for them to see oh, I am people pleasing, or, you know what I mean? How do people really get to understand that this is what they're doing to have those, to create those solutions?
So how do they become aware? Yeah, I'm not sure about numbers on who's aware of it or not. I will say that there are a large amount of people, very large, that are doing this because of some type of trauma, neglect, some type of situation, and they think that is healthy love. They think that me being dependent, me satisfying, me putting myself out there is this noble thing, even though these people are not treating me the same way, or even though they're giving me back something negative in return. So I would say it the self-awareness thing, just like any of these topics, but I think on the mental side, it's tougher to see this stuff because you have to be outside of yourself looking in. You have to zoom out and analyze your actions. Like a lot of people with anxiety do. You'll go to sleep, you'll think about, oh my God, I can't believe I did this. But why don't you ask yourself while you're in those states, was it a fair exchange? So I think how many people are aware? I'm not sure. I think that most people, when they begin to become aware, awareness is the first step.
Yeah.
You have to do something after that. I really don't have a good answer for your question.
No, I mean that was perfect. But you know, because when I think of people pleasing, and I think on this side, I feel like people learn this when they go through therapy or they go through coaching, right? They like it really does take that outside perspective for someone to say like, you know, I don't feel great. I don't feel like I'm getting back the energy that I'm giving out in these relationships, or why is this person bothering me so much, or why do they trigger me, or right, like it really comes in. We really think it's just this like surface level, I don't like people, or this person treated me this way, or that type of stuff. And normally when I hear the people pleasing conversations, they come after someone's gone through coaching or gone through therapy, right? And again, this is the Good Life Show, right? So we're talking about how you get to that life where you really have life exactly where you want it, designing the life that you want. And the relationship part of this is so important, right? It's so important to have healthy relationships, but I don't know that everyone understands how they're having a healthy or unhealthy relationship and how that shows up. And that's why this conversation is important. So that, again, you know, I appreciate us diving in it, but I want everyone that's listening to really pay attention and think on like, you know, how does this possibly show up in your life? Look at your relationships, right? Look at your relationships and find that and really think about like, man, are the people that I'm around, are they pouring in? Do they make me feel better? Am I pouring in? Are they pouring into me? Am I constantly giving to them out of some reason that maybe I don't know? Or do I just convince myself that I'm giving it out of, you know, because I want this love, because I want that love and connection? And then going back to, you know, where else are you receiving this love and connection? Do you get it in any other forms? I really think just evaluating these things, it's important. It's important, again, to tie it all into the good life, right? It's because your relationships are important, guys. Like your relationships, whether they're right, your platonic relationships, like you said, with your coworkers, with your spouse, or in you know, a serious relationship. Those are the things that we have to perfect in order, or at least get better in, and be aware of these areas so that we can get to that better life, guys. That's it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think um, one thing to really pay attention to here is there's just so many ways that you might be giving out too much energy. I kind of touched on it earlier, but I think money is so often overlooked. I actually have quite a few young men as clients that seem to provide for their friends. They take care of their food, they take care of their drinks, they do all these things, but they don't really receive anything in return. It's not a tit for tat. I give you money, you give me. Although I know people that are exactly like very to the cent about that. What like could they be doing something else for you? Are they do they build you up? Do they hype you up? Do they encourage you? So it doesn't always have to be the same currency of energy that's being exchanged. As long as you feel like that person is either neutral or building you up. If you feel like that person is bringing you down and you are consistently putting energy in that relationship, I would put a magnifying glass on why you're doing that. And could be did you had like a health topic around this, right?
Um, not necessarily, but I had more so like in Chris and what you were saying earlier, and visualizing the, you know, like where does it how when are people aware of this?
Mm.
And I think it's like a lot of things. It's a slow, you know, progress. But I think the language that they get around it is extremely important, right? So whether that language is from parents, whether that language is from, you know, professionals, like going through a therapist and hearing, oh, I think you're experiencing insert whatever term, right? Or whether that's like colloquial, like, around people around us. It's incredibly important because it dictates, it helps to mold our experience, right? So if you hear, you know, to use a charged term, like let's say bipolar, right? If you hear bipolar, and then you go and you say, "Hey, I'm having this, and this happened to me," and then a professional tells you, "Hey, you have this," you almost, or let me speak for myself, I have observed myself almost act in that way, or begin to act more in that way,
Because
right?
someone diagnosed you with that. Is that what you're saying?
Because someone gave me language, right, to associate with something that I think is going on. What if someone gives me different language? So, for example, let's take a kid that's, a young, and this is the studies that are out there, so I'll use this now. A young child like myself, so a young black male, in a class, and they are called learning disorder versus dyslexic versus ADHD versus, nah, this boy just got too much energy, man. You sit him down, whoop him one time, he'll be good to go, right? I take out the whoop part because that was me and my parents, but it doesn't have to be you and yours, right? but I bring all that up to say that it kind of changed because my parents, the way it came down to me, it was just like, yeah, sorry you're bored. Sucks. Just kind of what we got to do. You know what? And we'll go ahead and we'll complain about it later. Yeah. But what? Learning disorder? Oh, you better study more, huh? You better study more. You're like, oh, okay, that's good. Hit the books, right? So, okay, so instead of it being, oh, poor me, learning disorder or whatever, it was, other kids got to put in 30 minutes on their homework. You, my friend, got to put in 2.5 hours. That just is what it is, right? Luck of the draw. So I'm curious about that, the impact that has. As someone, gets the language around, hey, I like to make sure people have a great time and X, Y, and Z versus I need people to tell me they love me, right? And that's informed by, I think, what you pointed out, trauma at different stages in our development.
For sure. Man, you touched on so many things there. I think I cannot emphasize enough how important it is with any of these topics that I bring up. It is a spectrum. It is not yes or no, I have it. It is there are certain parts of you that lean in potentially to overdoing it when giving out your energy. The whole labeling thing. I personally have a huge gripe with this with a lot of doctors and therapists who are just so quick to throw a label out there. That is so confining. You are putting that person in a mental box. They are going to, as you said, Khabib, believe and fit into it and ease into it unless they are open-minded and critically thinking enough to believe that this authoritative figure may not be right. Or I can be changed. Because there's so much out there that says that if you're born with ADHD, you'll have it the rest of your life. Then how come you guys also tell us about neuroplasticity, where we change the way our brain works? So I have a lot of gripes with this. And I think it's one of the reasons why a lot of people that have not had success with therapists for a long time will end up finding their way to a coach, perhaps myself. So
I've actually never believed in ADHD. I don't even know if that's a real thing. I'm sure there's someone out there listening that their kid has been diagnosed or they think they are, but don't we all have some form of attention disorder? I don't know. I just don't think that that's an actual thing. I think it's something that they made up. But again, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a white coat. So yeah. I don't know.
Hey, listen, I'm not a white coat either. So I'm gonna give my opinion. All right. As is backed up by the great Lord. Right. Do some people have difficulty conforming to the matrix as we have designed it more than others? Yes.
Sure.
Yes.
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 We're all here.
Right? Yes, they do. Right? But it cannot be a problem in the sense of something that has to be corrected by chemical intervention when you have so many excellent contributors to society that come out of this space of like, oh, I don't fit here, or this is not how I learn, or I switch letters or whatever. How many quote unquote great contributors to society? I'm talking like, famous people, both whatever you want to look at it, right? Like, oh yeah, I didn't do well in school. Like, it's such the oldest trope. It's one of the oldest tropes ever. Maybe it's time for us to take a minute and say, you know what? Maybe it doesn't work that way. Maybe it just doesn't work that way, right? And it's funny, this is close to home because it's something I dealt with my family, in the sense of like, my younger siblings are each being different than myself in how they learn. So my parents, I feel like, had to go through a period of like, oh wait, they don't all learn like he does, or they don't all do what but he did it. Yeah, but that's not him, right? That's he's not going to do those things. So, figuring out different ways to handle them, my siblings as they came up, I kind of observed this, and I would highly recommend the Grade A Conspiracy, the A plus, or the A plus conspiracy, or the Grade A, one of those you'll find. Conspiracy. It's a great book about learning, and I think it really touches on a lot of this stuff. And I think partially how people become like, quote unquote people pleasers, right? How do you respond to correction? How do you respond to mistakes? How do you respond to failure? Right? Do you then like need to go high? Do you then need somebody to tell you, yo, you did do a good job? Or do you just, go harder, right?
I literally just talked about failure this morning to some people. I do a mindset call in the morning. We were just talking about failure and how, right, some of the most successful people in the world are professional failures because of how they frame failure, right? And how you then think about it actually translates to what you then start to do. And then again, this is why I push back against school so much, is because of what happens when you get that F on your paper, and what then your parents do to you, and then what happens after that point that you actually believe failure is not right. That failure is not what's supposed to happen, right? Like, that's not the right thing to do. And really, it's the opposite. Everyone that gets to success, any level of success in any area, it's because they failed a bunch of times. But it's all about how that word gets framed for people, and especially at an early age. I gave the example of Sarah Blakely, who's the founder of Spanx, right? And one of the things that she said, she became a billionaire before she was 30. And the story that I heard her say was, she was like, when she was at the dinner table as a child with her father, they would talk about kind of how their day went at school. And in the beginning, like most good kids, right, they're like, oh, I did this well, I got an A on this, or right, like all the highlights, right, had fun in this class, yada yada. But he would never applaud it, right? He would never applaud their good stuff. And eventually got to a place where he started asking, what did you fail at today? Like, what did you fail at? What did you not do well? And then he would start applauding the areas that they messed up, but they tried, but they got back up, right? But he only wanted to hear about the failures. And because of that, she did door-to-door sales for 7 years. Right? If anybody's ever done door-to-door sales, that is the most rejection you could ever get in your entire life, right? So door-to-door sales for 7 years, and then obviously builds this business to become a billionaire before 30. And it had a lot to do with that framing, that reframing of failure, basically. So it starts early, guys. It starts early.
It does. And I think you've both touched on how another area that people pleasing shows up is in education. You want the teacher's approval, you want your parents' approval with the report card, but how much damage does that do? I'll tell you, I leaned all the way into having one of the best report cards. I was working all the time, but I wasn't doing it for me. I was doing it so my parents would be proud of me. And that definitely sent me down this path. By the way, I eventually had full out come out and said this. The reason why I'm so passionate about this topic is I used to fit this archetype to a T. I had everybody else fooled that everything was going great. I satisfied everybody else's needs. Mine were not met. I'm looking at the time. I want to get to shame, so I'm going to go ahead and move us on. But guys, so many great things were said today. Definitely stop and contemplate, for whoever's listening, on what areas this could be showing up, as well as what labels have been placed on you, and as a society, can we stop placing labels on people and instead, because what we're doing when we place a label on somebody is we're saying that there's something wrong with you and you need to conform. What I would prefer we do as a society is say, okay, what are your strengths and weaknesses? What's your learning style? Let's build a lifestyle that suits you, that suits the way you work. We can make some tweaks in there. There's nothing wrong with you. I'm not a believer in God, but I do know that you were put on this earth. Evolution has brought you to this point in time. You can figure it out. There's nothing wrong with you. So I want to move on to shame. Once again, the common denominator here is a lack of self-worth. So if that rings true for some of you folks, a lack of self-worth could be showing up as people pleasing, could also be showing up as shame. What is shame? Shame is basically some part of you. You could feel it in your body, in your mind, whatever. It's some part of you, something about your life, about your health, about your relationship, about your wealth, whatever, that you don't want people finding out about. It terrifies you that this gets out. And that means that thing, that skeleton in your closet, that thing you're trying to stuff down, is doing nothing but controlling you. And I can go into so many different ways, which we will hear momentarily. Thoughts on shame, fellas?
There's a lot there, right?
It's one of the greatest teachers.
So much, yeah.
Ooh. One of the greatest teachers, good or bad. One of the greatest teachers, and I think some of the most successful people, and I say successful not in the materialistic sense, but successful in terms of designing a life where they don't need a break from, which is how I define success in life, are individuals who have gotten very, very comfortable with situations that most would assign or label as shameful, right? They've gotten very, very good at responding to that. And I realize the more, worldly success, the more whatever is given to an individual, it's kind of like they have to get quicker and quicker and better at responding to those things. And it's a game of kind of Guitar Hero. You keep missing streaks and you're not going to last very long, right? So, you're Drake and you built up this film, but if you lose so many public battles or public reactions to things, right? It makes or breaks you is what I realized. It makes or breaks you, and it's taking a pie to the face and showing up like, right? It's such a game changer, and it's something I believe everything to me acquired. It's not something that I acquired as a young child, responding to shame. And it's something I'm like making a conscious thing that I'm taking on, is how do I respond in situations that I feel shameful. I'm showing up like the best version of myself, like I would like to show up. I'm not all prim and proper and perfectly set up, right? So how do I respond in those situations? Directly proportional to kind of how things grow for me professionally and also personally.
That's huge, man. That's huge. Shame is one of those things, like you said, could be, you said it perfect, right? It's one of the greatest teachers, right? Good or bad on both sides. And really, so many people deal with it. We all deal with it, right? We all have something or some things that we are not proud of, don't like, and normally from society standards, right, is not something that we want to tell people or talk about or whatever the case is. And we push that thing down and we hold on to that thing because we don't want to be an outcast, be judged, right? Those types of things. And it's such a real part of our lives that, until we are faced with it, until we realize that, like, hey, we're not the only one. You're not the only one that deals with that. And you're not going to be judged in those ways, that then you can start to get it out and have that freedom to talk about it. But I think many people just aren't in that spot. But it's an important thing, man.
Yeah. Like you guys have both alluded to fear of judgment. Like anything revolving around fear of this getting out, like it goes in so many different directions. Fear of judgment, fear of public reaction, fear of what people may think, your family, friends, teachers, coaches, whatever. The other thing that comes with this is fear of abandonment because of what they might think about you. And that's why this whole self-worth thing is so huge on this. So like, please, like if you are dealing with some type of self-worth shakiness, talk to somebody. Feel free to DM me. If you don't want to work with me, I can try and direct you to somebody. Holistic psychologist, again, great one on this one. Brene Brown, excellent resource on this one. By the way, stay tuned because at the end of this, I got book recommendations for all this stuff. I want to dive into causes of this. We've kind of touched on a couple so far. I would say a big cause is, how do your parents deal with shame? You are emulating and mimicking your parents. So for all the parents out there, please listen up to this. If you have things about your life and your relationship and your personality, whatever, and your kids are seeing you avoid dealing with those, avoid admitting that you have them, you are not going to get very far dealing with that if you can't come out and actually approach it, bring it out into the light, where, as Brene Brown says, shame in the light will dwindle. You cannot deal with it. And if you are passing that on to your kids, your son, your daughter, you are basically teaching them to let shame control them, to let the fear of the public people letting, like, if people know this about me, my life's over. Great. Now public opinion consumes you and your shame consumes you. So causes are certainly mimicking your parents. Other causes, just trauma, neglect. It's a very common one. It's almost so cliche, I hate to say it, but when there's a lot of emotional turmoil around, you don't know how you're going to adapt as a child. So, I think one thing to mention is, when we were talking about causes and how to become more self-aware of this, what was your family dynamic like? Did it seem healthy and strong? If not, dive in, analyze it. Have these conversations with your parents in a productive, calm manner, so you can begin to understand this and relieve yourself from all these things that you've bottled up. Bullying. Got bullied right here. I'm actually kind of grateful it happened, because it made me way more insightful about my surroundings than I probably had to be. I wouldn't be a good coach without it. But when you feel like you are an outcast, you're going to shrink. You're going to potentially people please. You're going to be, these things that people say about you could 100% come up as, I can't let anybody know about this. I'm going to hide it. I'm going to be somebody else. I'm going to shape shift. I'm a people pleaser. I'm going to just hide it down low. So those are some of the causes. And I've got a bunch of solutions teed up. I'd love to hear some reactions from you guys. Oh.
Listen, that was a bunch. I mean, at the end of the day, as you're talking, Stu, I'm thinking about my life. I'm thinking about my mom. I'm thinking about, right, like the areas that, right, we constantly. It's funny because it happens to be the area that I work in, like the shame around money and the shame around the financial decisions and the choices that she made, and choosing not to, right, like whether it's address them or whether it's kind of talk about them, like I just know there's so much shame on that side from her part. And when you said like we get that, from our parents and picking up those things, it's like, man, it just caused me to want to be like, man, I want to have another conversation with my mom about this stuff. You know what I mean? Like I want to talk a little bit more about just those areas that she didn't feel the greatest, that she was hiding, or that, it's tough, right? Now myself being a parent, I understand, right? I understand. I see it. I get it. I understand how it's simple to hide things from your child that you might not want them to see because you think you're shielding them from it. But really, it's about opening up and talking about how we go through these things. Yeah, man, that's a powerful part. Really anytime you go back to like what our parents did, or like kind of that upbringing, I think it's just a powerful thing to be able to do.
Yeah, it's the strongest relationship we'll have in our life, period, right? And what had me kind of tongue tied there a little bit was just again deciding what direction to take it in, as there are so many different directions to take it in. But one thing, as I look at the time here, I wanted to definitely comment on before we roll out is we just talked about the roots of these things? Where do these things anchor themselves, right? They anchor themselves, with tons of situations with parents. They anchor themselves with situations in our, young social interactions, and then to our young adult social interactions, right? So different periods like that, where major periods in our sort of community-based lifestyle spend, right? When it comes to health, what I see quite often is that it becomes this double helix. It becomes this double bind. When I say it becomes, I mean shame becomes this double bind, where we can't be fully honest with what it is that's going on, so that a solution can be provided. And so that is like not being able to say, like, listen, the current condition of your physical body means that you are at risk for very high, like you have to be so careful in how you explain that, right? Where there that should not be, there should be no shame around it. It's as simple as like the activities that I know to do, as we know to do in society. I haven't been doing them, and that's just kind of where it is. I believe in a society where I believe this did exist. I don't think this is like a utopia thing. I believe this did exist, where it was not that big of a deal for somebody to tell you, hey, friend, brother, sister, whatever. Yeah, maybe skip this meal, right? Maybe. Yeah. Looking a little thick around the waist there, buddy. Right? Not, but now that sounds like, oh God, that's so rude. That's so harsh. It's so whatever. Why? Right? To the
They're
point
looking
where
out,
we have to now lie about things we know is true. No, that is not your natural makeup. That is a lie. I hate to say it. I hate to be the one to say it. Right? That is a lie. That's not your natural makeup. No, yes, that does lead to heart disease, and yes, heart disease is number one on the death chart.
Did y'all see? Did y'all see when they like dragged Lizzo about this stuff? Right, when Lizzo came out about like, yeah, like it was a real thing. Jillian Michaels like went on like Good Morning America, like some big platform, and basically said what you're saying could be, because like everyone was like, Lizzo body, body perfect,
body shaming
or whatever, right? And Jillian Michaels literally like, nah, like we can't applaud that. Like I don't understand what everyone's doing. Like we can't applaud like that. Like it leads to heart disease. You know what I mean? Like she was trying to say that side, and she got like dragged,
drilled. I'm sure
it was just not pleasant at all. And yeah, that's the society we're in right now.
Yeah. It's such
dragged.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Drug.
Yeah, wait. Still real quick. The other side of that though is the not being so infatuated with the shame aspect of it, that is the only reason you do the things we know to do. I think both sides are important. And it's this thing that keeps us in sort of like a narrow space of what is allowed, what isn't allowed, right? Too much shame, too little shame, too much shame, too little shame, too much shame, too little shame, right? And it keeps us in this narrow space as it comes to food. Like, yes, you don't have to have shame about what you eat, but if you eat in a way that's leading you to well, yeah, a little shame would be good, right? So you know what I mean? So it's kind of like moving that spectrum, or maybe getting rid of it altogether and focusing on the different guardrails, a different way of keeping us in check, because that shame has now been leveraged on a macro level to control society through exactly what I just stated, right? Because maybe the bigness of whatever, or your body size had nothing to do with anything, right? We didn't know that for a while. Maybe it had nothing to do with anything, but that's what we've chosen. All right, so I think being both sides there.
Yeah.
So this is it. Drop it. Get rid of it. Come on, guys, get rid of it.
Remember the soundbite.
Yeah.
For the shame. So I think you nailed it with the piece where shame can also be a very dangerous motivator. To me, like when I literally go back to my nerddom, please tell me this book is in the reach right now. There's a book. This was my first introduction into reading about psychology, Star Wars and psychology. So for any nerd out there, if you want to learn about this and learn about yourself and start cracking this open, you've studied these characters of light and dark so long. You know Anakin's whole life mission, like this is his history. Shame is a dark side motivator. You are using a powerfully dark force. Let's talk body image. For women and men out there who are so afraid of what people may think or may not value them, that is their main motivator to take care of their body and to have the six pack, to have the booty, whatever. Like if that is your 100% motivator, you're playing with a very dangerous force, because you are basically presenting that I do all this to make you guys happy. That's why I keep going with back and forth with how shame and people pleasing are so heavily related on this. Also, earlier you guys mentioned fear of judgment, fear of public reaction. What is an easier way to mess up is how you react to public reaction when something comes out about you. Do you own it? Do you deny it? Do you try and tuck it away in a closet and like just totally take the blame off of it? It could be a very neutral thing where a story came out that painted it in a negative light. If you go off on this rant versus if you calmly say like, okay, that's one side of the story. Here's my side. This is something I'm not ashamed of. It's something I probably didn't need all you guys to know, but now that it's out there, I can't do anything about it. Here's the gist. That is so powerful. When the celebrities handle that with grace, it's huge. So I want to dive into solutions real quick because I know we're past time. Solutions. Vulnerability and courage around it. You have to have the courage to open up to a confidant, to a professional, to whoever, personal, professional, it doesn't matter. You have to tell people and just enroll somebody else. For those who have attended Landmark Forum, thank you for being. You have to enroll other people in what you are going through and what your mission is to get past this thing. That is how you pull this into the light. And guess what? When you tell somebody that you trust, you can't just go telling some random person on the street or somebody that could be like a nemesis or jealous of you. You tell somebody that you trust and watch their reaction. Watch how they still love you. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, one person still cares about me and values me even though I have this thing. Man, this thing just got a lot weaker. There's a lot less control over me on this thing. The other piece of this is the very common term on Instagram, shadow work. Now, anybody else that came from a very logical numbers, matrix, blue pill background like myself, when you begin to pull yourself out and expose yourself to alternative medicines, foods, ideology, spiritual, chakras, whatever, you may come across this term shadow work. I would not write it off. The whole concept of shadow work is to face your demons. Who doesn't want to face their demons? Who wants to let their demons control them? This is shame. This is powerful stuff here. So a couple of book recommendations for shame, especially shame around sex, because shame can show up in so many different areas of your life. Sexual relations, emotional relations, platonically, romantically, just all areas of life, how much money you have, like everything. I would recommend specifically for the men out there that feel like they have difficulty with porn addiction, Your Brain on Porn. This will change the way you have a relationship with that. It'll change your personal relationship with sex. It'll change your relationship with women. And by the way, this is also a women thing now. This is like the numbers have gone up drastically. Listen to the first couple chapters of that. Listen to the numbers so that you are bought into understanding how porn is literally messing up your life hugely. If you are so deep in it and just I would check it out no matter what your relationship with porn is if you have it. When it comes to more of the people-pleasing side of things, No More Mr. Nice Guy by Dr. Robert Glover will heal your relationships. When it comes to more of the platonic, what do people think? Fear of judgment. You feel like you're controlled by the masses. The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck by Mark Manson. There's resources out there, y'all. Promise you. You can do it on your own, or you can talk with somebody that's been focusing on this stuff for years. It's up to you. Choice is yours. So, fellas, any closing comments?
I think leaving with the resources is a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful thing, man. Because I really believe in individuals take my word for it, but go in and dive in deep yourself, because you might see something I missed, or you might see something Stu missed, or you might see something Chris missed, right? And you might be the voice that adds a different texture to the conversation.
That's right. That's right. And again, the resources are everything, right? Go in, look at yourself, analyze, see where you are, read some books on this, right? The last thing that you said, Stu, enroll some people, right? Enroll some people in, like, that's such a big part of this. You can't keep it all in. You can't keep it to yourself. You got to talk to people. Hence why we're doing the show, guys. I always want to bring it back to this. Hence why we do the show. We're giving you access to people that you can talk to about these things. We all want to get to a better life. We all want to design a better life for ourselves, whether that's in our relationships, whether that's in our health, in our money, in our mindset, in any area. We want to get better. And so now we're giving you an outlet. We're giving you always could reach out to us. You can always DM us. We're always around, because you need to enroll some other people into what you have going on and how you're going to get beyond this. And we're here to help. We're here to help. So I always appreciate the conversation. Stu, this one was a good one, man. I know this is going to help a lot of people. It helped Aaron. Aaron said this is one of his favorite episodes yet. So thank you,
Aaron.
We appreciate you checking in and continuing to watch. And for everyone that's Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, again, every Wednesday night, we're coming in and we're talking about these topics around health, wealth, love, happiness, mindset, all of those things. So you can start to design the life you want and get to the good life. So
I got one last thing. So I just want to go ahead and for those that don't know, my whole mission statement is to heal, because I have been at the lowest pieces of all these different topics I have talked about. I did not go through traditional education. I went through actually living it and having to pull myself out with different resources. So for those that are dealing with this, please reach out to me. If you don't want to work with me individually, we can have some conversations. I can direct you to resources. Like, this is how we heal future generations, is by dealing with these types of topics. So that's all I got. I guess right now, I'll be honest, I'm pretty good at this. I'm getting closer and closer to an expert every single day. So I'm here for you.
That's it. And we're your resources. So again, every Wednesday night, we're jumping on live. Catch the pregame, 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. Then we're doing the full live show, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. And we're giving you 2 hours of this health, wealth, love, happiness, mindset talks. It's going to benefit your life. Share this with some people on Instagram. Share this with some people on Facebook. Don't forget, sign up for the email list. Email TGL, where is it? bit.ly/email TGL. Jump on the email list. Got some good stuff cooking for you guys in 2022. We want you to live. I just wanted Khabib to do this. I just want him to do the cooking thing again. That's it. That's it. Oh, there we go, salt and pepper. There we go. So we want you to make sure that you check in with us every week and make sure this jump on this list so we can get you rocking and rolling in 2022. All right. Love you guys. Enjoy the rest of your week.
Take care, y'all.
Take care.